Welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
I'm your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
Always a pleasure to host with you.
It is, man. It's always good to be in your presence, man. I tell you, you don't know what it means to me to be able to sit next to you on the set, but now we're doing Zoom, and it's just the distance. But we got to do the Lord's work as we continue to do what we have to do.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the laboring here and the friendship. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got some interesting things to talk about. We got an election coming up, a presidential.
How about presidential? Yeah, the big one's coming up. Yeah, I think the big one's coming up. We're going to talk about it today, and we have a guest with us today who's going to help us to try to gear the community in the right way, get information to move the community all across Marion County towards not only Marion County, but all over, just the voting process all over the state of Indiana to get people to understand that it has to be done. We got to get out and vote. If we're ever going to make some changes, and it's not about Republican or Democrat, it's just changes that'll be best for the human race.
Yeah.
And I think that's more important than anything.
And also important as we go forward here, our sponsors, Lee Castle and Crawley.
Yes, and then we have Al's Modern Clothing and Shoes. We also have Fervent Prayer, Christian Academy, and then we have the Marion County Public Health Department, who's with us and been with us for a while. Thank our sponsors, and we're Zooming because of them.
Absolutely, and please check us out on Facebook and WHMB TV 40 on YouTube. We got a great show. Dr. David Green's going to be joining us to talk about voting, getting registered to vote. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. I'm James Jackson, your host.
And I'm Dr. Wayne Moore, your co-host.
Now, Dr. Moore, let me also say that we commend the Olivet Missionary Baptist Church and you. You all have been doing voter registration for as long as I've known you. I'm sure.
Yeah, we're getting ready to kick it up again soon as this election is out of the way. And we can, as soon as we hear it, we'll be registering people to go vote. And the second verse to that chorus, that song is, you gotta vote.
Yeah.
And so you gotta vote. And so that's what we're doing.
And Dr. Green, you are president of an organization, the Concerned Clergy. If not for the Concerned Clergy, there would be many people who are in politics, Black people in particular, that would not be there if it had not been for the organization that you're leading.
Yeah, the Concerned Clergy has played an important role in helping politicians to get elected, Pastor Jackson and Pastor Moore. So it takes a collaborative effort to be successful, obviously, in the political realm. So, and if there ever was a crucial election, it is the one in November of 2020, and we all got to do our part.
A lot of jobs up for grabs, and I'm disappointed that as a member of the community, I haven't seen more of the president of the BMA, the president of the Concerned Clergy out on the leading edge, being utilized by local leaders to help deal with some of the problems. And that's just my own opinion. Historically, in the city of Indianapolis, both organizations have been utilized to help us move forward.
Thank you. I think the BMA is still very much alive. It is over 150 years old. It's still doing what it does. And we do what we can, when we're asked to do it. But, sometimes when you're in those particular situations, such as BMA, and I'll just speak for the BMA, and you don't see things eye to eye, that is the opportunity for people to discard you from situations and tables and meetings and things of that nature. So that's just part of the territory, but you got to keep working because our theme is community first.
All right, so we've got some information, and Dr. Moore, if you could lead us out on this. People might not be registered to vote. Is it too late?
No, well, it's too late for the primary, most definitely. But we're going to start pushing people towards all the state of Indiana towards voting for presidential election in November. This was a record election as it relates to primary. It was 20 times the ballots, over 122,000 possibly have an opportunity to be counted. There are thousands that are not going to be counted because of some of the errors that took place or decisions that were made as it relates to the Indiana Election Commission's arm in pushing the idea of not pulling extensions or doing certain things that would have made the election much smoother. The ballot process became slow. Some people probably even today are just getting their ballots, haven't even gotten them yet. Some people haven't even gotten them yet for the past primary. So we want to make sure that does not happen, and what can be done to make the community aware of how serious it is to vote. That's where we are.
Dr. Green, we're hearing a lot about the importance of getting out and to vote. Of course, that's not new. Do you think coronavirus 19 is still with us? And with all the protesting going on, do you think that's going to, particularly in the fall, if this particular virus behaves like seasonal flu, we could see some things happening in November? Do you think people are going to come out anyway?
Well, I think that's really my concern related to voting. What we've seen in the primary, that will be a pattern for November that we need to address. While there were record requests for absentee ballots of 120, over 120,000, there were not 120,000 people who got to vote. Many of those got sent late, are being sent late, so those ballots will not be counted. And then when you see, due to COVID-19, the coronavirus, and the reduction of voting sites down to 22 across Marion County, with the size of Marion County, that created lengthy lines, and that discouraged some people from voting as well. And as you noted, with the potential rise of COVID-19 again this fall, we have got to get a better plan for Marion County. That includes more sites to be able to go vote. We have to fix the issue so that ballots do not get sent to people's addresses late. They need to have adequate time to respond. And I just want to encourage everybody as soon as possible not to delay. When you get your ballot, get it in the mail. We don't want it to be, said, or people to use an excuse, well, your ballot got lost, or the mail delayed it, so we didn't get it until after 12 o'clock on Tuesday. We want people's voices to be heard. So everybody has the right to vote. That's your American privilege. They need to be able to take advantage of it in a safe way. So that means we need early voting sites. We need multiple sites. We don't need to create it where it's a hassle and a deterrent for people to vote. I call that voter suppression. We need people to be able to vote.
Dr. Green, if you had a plan to put in place, and I know you, and I've known you for some years, you're a very integral man, factual man. If you had a plan, just sitting here, based on what you have gleaned from this past primary, what type of plan that you would put that you think the community ought to look at?
Well, I think it starts with, clearly, when we reduced the voting sites in Marion County down to 22, that's problematic, with the city of our size. To say we're going to go down to 22 sites. Hamilton County, which is far smaller than we are, had close to 100 sites. How can that be? We need to address those type of issues just clearly on voting day. And then we clearly need better systems in place to ensure that people, when they request a ballot, they can get that ballot with plenty of time to respond and get it back by the deadline. And I would just urge our people, we may have to, those that don't want their vote suppressed, make sure you respond early. Treat it like, if you're going to do mail-in voting or early voting, don't wait to the last week or two prior to the election, but do that early in October. treat it like it's not the first Tuesday in November, it's the first Tuesday in October, so that votes don't get lost or not counted. In technology society 2020, we shouldn't even be having these issues, in my opinion.
Agreed. And we're coming up on a break here, and certainly want to give you the first Real People, Real Voices seal of approval, because you have the cup. You have the Real People, Real Voices mug right there in the background. Thank you. We appreciate
Thank you so much.
We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. I'm James Jackson.
I'm Pastor Wayne Moore.
Our esteemed guest,
Yes.
Dr. Green, David Green.
Yes, sir. Dr. Green, thanks, man, for coming on, helping us. We really appreciate you. As you know, I've been in a lot of settings, and people, first thing they do is thank people for the service that they give, in the political arena. They say, Dr. Green, we want to thank you for the service that you've rendered to the community. And so I want to thank you for the service you rendered to the community. I got a question for you, though. How does Hamilton County, if it's under the, and I want to be, you help me if my facts are not right, the Indiana Election Commission, is Hamilton County under that umbrella as well?
Oh yeah, everybody's under the
How do they get 100 sites and Marion County only gets 22 sites?
Well, each one of the counties have their own election commission. So there are certain decisions that are made based on that commission. One of the things that is hopefully being considered is having like voting boxes for that. I would suggest with COVID-19 that we consider putting in places where people could almost like a post office box. You could go and place it in this box and a safe environment and vote. We need with COVID-19, we need a safe way of making things happen. And we also need numerous sites. I know it will probably be more costly, but we need more sites because people don't want to gather in large crowds and wait in long lines. In the primary, we had people that waited 2 and 3 and 4 hours to vote. We have to shorten that process up, in my opinion, so people won't be discouraged from being part of the process or putting their life at risk, because this virus is real. So it's important that we do this in a wise fashion so people's voices can be heard.
And certainly we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to vote. And traditionally, you had to register, you still have to register, but you had to go to a precinct that was in the area you lived in. But there's some changes that have been made that allows people more flexibility. Talk about that.
Yes, one of the things that did happen with the Election Commission very recently in the last year to 18 months is that you can go to any of those sites and vote, because they made it where some people were, it was easy for them to vote when they were working. So they would go to a site. So that is a very positive move in the right direction. We don't want to restrict people. So if we can make it available where people can go vote anywhere in Marion County, if you're a registered Marion County voter, go to those sites. Well, I know one of the things that got lost in this primaries election is people's sites got closed, and as a result, they didn't know where to go. There's a need for a lot of good information, clear information to be communicated as well. And I'm afraid of the confusion as we move into November. Will people, if you open up the old site, are they thinking about the old site? Are they thinking about the one I had to go to? Or they think it really moved? We're going to have to communicate to the community where the voting sites are going to be. And we need to do that early, because a lot of people, they can't wait to the last minute to try to figure out where to go vote and try to travel all over Marion County as well.
Yeah, I think that was a problem for a lot of people this year in this primary. The news of the 22 sites was not handled correctly as it relates to disseminating that information. And I think those sites need to be pinned very early and put out there as early as possible, just like the ballots, if possible, needs to be put out there early so we can get them back in. I heard you use the term voter suppression. Do you think that some of, at the end of the day, that we could label some of this behavior to that?
Oh, clearly, if you go from several sites down to 22 sites for people to vote, that is voter suppression. You're squeezing hundreds, if not thousands, of people down to 22 locations in the midst of COVID-19. Gentlemen, I want you to pause and think about that. The reality of that you're going to get people who are going to say, "Hey, I'm not going to do this." And imagine, in this particular situation, the sun was shining, but had it been raining, do you really think people would have stood out in the rain in the long lines to get to vote? People, when they make these choices and decisions, they know they are discouraging the voter. And in my opinion, that's voter suppression. Now we got to push through the voter suppression, but I call it voter suppression.
And I don't want to insult any. Go ahead, Brother Jackson. I'll come after you. Go ahead.
We may not know how many people contracted the virus
Right.
being so close to one another. It's a matter of public safety. 6 feet is the recommended distance. 12 feet is a safer distance, some epidemiologists are saying. It's 22 sites. Proportionately, certainly it's not enough. What can be done to facilitate a big election coming up, like the presidential election, gubernatorial election coming up? What can be done at this point, if anything?
I believe the community has to share with the clerk and government leaders that we want to be able to exercise our right to vote. We don't want it suppressed. We don't want to get caught up in quote unquote processes or new systems that don't allow the voter's voice to be heard. The voter's voice needs to be heard in Marion County. If other counties can have multiple sites, we got to say we need to have several sites. If Hamilton County can have it, how come Marion County can't have it? And the state's not stopping it. It's Marion County stopping it. So we're talking about Marion County leadership saying we have to do better, and we're going to make it easier for the voters of Marion County. It has to be about that and not some other agenda.
I'd like to say this, and no offense to either of you brothers. I think you all know I love you. I live in Pike Township, the greatest township in Marion County. And just wanted you to know that. I went to all voting sites in Pike Township, and I've never seen social distancing practice as it was in this election. I mean, these lines were 100 yards to 175 yards deep. A lot of people, and I agree with you to a certain extent, but a lot of people say that the lines were thick because there were only 22 locations. I believe that is true to a certain extent, but I also believe the lines were thick because people felt they needed to vote in this particular primary.
Well, there's no doubt people felt the need to vote. So you're going to see those long lines. And when you add 6 feet or 12 feet to it, those lines are going to be 100 to 50 yards long. That's part of
In Anderson in November.
Yeah. Yeah.
What'd you say, Brother Jackson?
Vote in Anderson in November.
Yeah, but I'm with you guys, man. I think we need to be pushing the community to come forward. People need to write letters to their council persons, to their legislators, making sure that we can light a fire under those particular elected officials to tell them that we want to exercise our constitutional right by voting, and we need more sites. We need boxes. We need whatever we need. And we want to make sure that the community knows that. And knowing Dr. David Green, I know he's going to make sure that gets rolling. And it's not to suggest anything other than the clerk's office is doing. I think that we cannot risk not having a good election this year. Whoever the candidates are, we just need to vote. And we're voting, and I'm voting my interests. I'm voting change. And so that's where I am with it. And that's how I feel that we need to make sure people getting ballots 3 and 4 days after the election. And then the deadline is on that particular day, June the 2nd, 11:59, and that's it. It just didn't set right with me. And I hope that those things will be corrected in the very near future.
I think it's important that the community make sure that you have your own plan and say, I'm going to vote early, I'm going to be intentional, and not allow the system to kind of guide you and wait to the last minute. I think otherwise you could be finding yourself in lengthy lines, considering what may or may not happen with COVID-19. The way around that, what we will be advocating for is that people vote early,
Right.
whatever that means. What's best for them, if there are boxes available, if there's early site locations and there's multiples of those and not just, a couple of them. I know we like to do it downtown, but most of us know it's difficult to get downtown. So we're going to have things in place and take advantage of. If you're going to do mail in, make sure you make your requests as early as possible. We're going to try, and hopefully Real People and Real Voices will also add to that to get the word out. Here's when you can place your request for a ballot, get your ballot, respond and vote, and the sooner the better, so our votes can be heard. It's just important for me to see the community exercise its right and not sit back and not vote, because that's not going to be helpful to anybody. And that's something that has to be addressed, because so many people don't vote, and we don't want them discouraged from being a part of the process. It's time to exercise your right. Register to vote, and as Pastor Moore said earlier, and then make sure you go vote.
We'll let that be the last word. We're out of time. Thank you, Dr. Green. Dr. Moore, as always, pleasure to host with you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. As always, Dr. Moore, wonderful show and wonderful to be with you today.
Yeah, it is. It's been a wonderful show, and it's been a great privilege to be with you today. Let me give the sponsors this last time. Lee Cossack and Crawley are still with us. Thank you so much. Al's Modern Clothing and Shoes, thank you so much. Fervent Care Christian Academy, thank you so much. And Marion County Public Health Department, thank you so much for sponsoring us.
We'll see you next time.